Hello, this is Jake Makes Things, and today we're going to be looking at lock cores. I'm going to be featuring parts from two lock cores. The first one is the core from this Master Lock Lockout Tagout. It's actually the same core that we removed from the Lockout Tagout in video 1. And this Quickset Deadbolt core. So we're going to go through some parts. We have the keyway, which is where the key is inserted. You can have a paracentric keyway, which is what this Master Lock has. Or you can have just a straight keyway, which is what this Quickset has. You have the Bible, which is this book-shaped part on the back. And that's what holds the driver pins and springs and allows the key pins to enter if the key is incorrect. If the bitting on the key is not deep enough, it will actually push the key pins up above the shear line and into the Bible, which will hold the lock closed. The cylinder is the outside of the lock. It keeps the key pins in when you rotate the plug, which is this center portion. That way, when you right now, well, this would be locked if there were pins in it. If you would insert the key, which I will do, even though there isn't really any point with there not being any pins in it, and rotate, it will keep the cylinder will actually keep the key pins from just falling out and taking gravity from taking over and pulling those key pins out. Then we have the plug, which has holes for the key pins to slide into, and the outside of this plug and in between is the bottom of the shear line, which is the in between the cylinder and the plug. When you insert the correct key, it will actually push the key pins in line with the shear line. So we're going to take a key pin, and I can actually show you. Oh, that went flying. One moment. There we go. We can take a key pin, and this is from pin 1, I believe, from the Lotto lock, and we'll insert it in the hole for pin 1, and you can see how it is pretty much level with the shear line. Now let's insert it in 5, which is, if we look at the key, 5 is this very raised section. If we insert that very long pin from 1 in 5, that'll simulate the incorrect key, and the pin is above the shear line, which means that when you try to rotate the plug, this will not allow the plug to rotate, since this pin will be inside the Bible. And if we have a pin that is too shallow, like let's say we stick the pin from 5, which is this very tiny pin, into slot 1, you can see that it actually didn't sit there right, because it is so small that it actually rotated into the keyway. There we go. So you can see, if you look down there, that there is plenty of space inside, and if we were to drop, let's take the serrated pin. If we were to drop the driver pin, which would simulate the spring, we use gravity to simulate that spring. The combination of key pin and driver pin sits above the shear line and doesn't allow the lock to open. And then I will return these parts before they get lost. Alright, so then we've kind of already talked about key pins. I'm going to bring the pinning tray I have set over here for this section. These are the pins of the master lock core. There are different sizes, and those correspond to the different sections of the bitting. I will go more in depth into the relation of the bitting in this particular key in the master lock video. Then we have our driver pins. We have spool pins, which actually they're more in focus down here. We have spool pins, and they're shaped like very small spools. So when you have the pin in line with the cylinder, the very small section of the spool, that center lower section, when it is in line with the Bible, will allow that to turn, but not all the way, giving the impression of a false set. So that is a little bit of anti-pick protection. It also makes it very resistant to lower skill attacks, such as raking. There are also serrated pins, which can cause the pins to make clicks or catch on the sides of the holes in the key pin holes in the plug or the holes in the Bible. So they would catch along the shear line and they would make clicks or make just very different feedback to someone trying to pick the lock. So this lock, as you can see, this has 5 spools and a serrated. And the reason for that is, since spool pins are so good, but you still can't use all of them because of that difference. If you had all spool pins, when all of these sections would get to the shear line, it would actually allow the plug to wiggle inside the shear line and just make the plug very difficult to work with. You can actually see part of that, or more on that, in Bosnian Bill's video, which I will link in a little box up in the corner of your screen. And there are other pins that are called T-pins. I don't know very much about them, and when I learn, I will tell you all about them. We also have some springs. These are all just standard, very small springs that push on the back of the Bible and press everything down into the lock. And it applies resistance, so you can't really just insert something, press them all above the shear line, or say you have your key in and pull your key out. You're not just relying on gravity to make those pins drop, since some locks, the Bible is on the bottom. Depending on if you're European or American, a lot of people will have their locks rotated differently. So we have a spool pin, we have a key pin. We're going to reassemble the core, and for the heck of it, let's put on the retaining clip. Just so we don't make a mess and lose the pins, which has happened. Alright, so now that that's on and everything's inserted, as you can see, we've got gravity, locks unlocked. I could spin it with my finger. And then if I would turn it upside down, the lock magically locks. Just not very well. It doesn't reliably lock at all. Oh, it caught there for a moment. But sometimes, and of course now that I'm doing it for the video, I can't get it to do it. That's just typical. But, so it would, so as you can see, it's very, very unlockable without the springs. Alright, that is all I have for you. Have a great day. Be sure to like and subscribe, especially for those upcoming videos.